Yo guys, what is going on? no, seriously, what the fuck is going on? So, I got into this somewhat pensive mood, and I have a propensity to ruminate and all that, and it turns out that all my life, I've been under this misapprehension that a certain game is incredibly popular. Now, the game in question, of course, being Prototype. So, I've always thought that saying that Prototype is a popular game is simply stating the obvious, but, to my dismay, I was abruptly met with a very sad realization that this simply isn't the case. So, whenever I'd bring up the subject of Prototype anywhere to anyone, as in, whenever I'd ask anyone if they'd ever played Prototype, more often than not, my question would either be met with radio silence or a resounding no. So, people would inquire about this game, and I'd be somewhat dumbfounded and bamboozled that they'd even ask me something like that, because, who doesn't know what Prototype is? And then, one of my close acquaintances was like, what? Prototype? I've never heard of that. Is that really a video game? So I was like, bruh, pay me green and call me a pickle. This literally cannot be happening. And I still can't wrap my head around the fact that, Prototype is apparently, and stay with me, an irrevocably obscure title. And it's a fact that I still have a hard time coming to terms with. So, I thought I was ill prepared to make this video at first, but then I did a bit of research and scrutinized a lot of forums, and it's been brought to my attention that a lot of people aren't simply unacquainted with the game, but they also resent it. So, I got kind of worked up over that and didn't want to simply gloss over it, so I was like, this is uncalled for. So I was like, yeah, that's my cue, this calls for a video. And, that being said, in all actuality, this video is long overdue. I took it upon myself to inform people about, the riveting experience that is Prototype, and state how it fares in comparison to most games in its genre. And I'll also be comparing Prototype to its second installment, or, well, its sequel, Prototype 2. And I'll try to provide some arguments as to why this franchise would make an incredible addition to the modern action game category. Now, I'm gonna try to give this video at least some semblance of order, because my vids tend to be very disorganized, as you already know. And I half expect this video to be moderately lengthy, but I hope this endeavor will bear fruit. So, for the uninitiated and, those out of the loop, Prototype is a franchise with two video games. In the first game, you play as Alex Mercer, and in the second game, you play as James Heller. Now, I obviously have no intention of recounting the whole story and, beating around the bush, so I'll try to give you the outline, like the SparkNotes version. I found this on Wiki, so I'm going to be quoting that verbatim. Or, well, I'll try to. So the game follows Alex Mercer, who wakes up on a morgue slab in the basement of Gentek, a large and influential genetic engineering company. So Alex manages to escape and sets out to recover his memory and find out exactly what transpired. So he soon discovers that he now possesses superhuman, powerful, shape-shifting abilities that grant him superhuman strength, speed, agility, durability, weaponry, and the ability to consume people to gain their memory, skills, and appearances. So, with no memory of his previous life, Mercer is forced to track down and consume those related to the conspiracy in order to uncover the truth. So, basically, Mercer faces Blackwatch soldiers, and they're like a unit dedicated to combating biological warfare. And he also faces the infected, or well, zombies consisting of civilians who have contracted a strange virus. And he also faces these very powerful monsters known as hunters. So Alex Mercer makes contact with his sister Dana, who assists him in tracking down targets who can shed light on his past. And Mercer eventually infiltrates the Gentek headquarters, and on level 51 of the building, he basically finds a confined woman called Elizabeth Green, who escapes and takes control of the infected. So Mercer soon meets Dr. Ragland, a pathologist linked to the whole matter, and this doctor helps him. So Mercer eventually makes contact with an anonymous individual and uncovers the origin of the virus and Elizabeth Green. So in 1969, the government had tested the virus's predecessor in Hope, Idaho, designed to target predetermined races. So the virus transformed into something far more deadly, and the entire population of Hope was infected. Elizabeth Green was the sole survivor whose body accepted the virus, rewriting her genetic code along with that of her son, Pariah. So the remaining population of Hope was destroyed by Blackwatch, and Green and Pariah were kept in captivity for further research. So soon after Mercer discovers his own past, basically Blackwatch shut down the Gentech project due to news leaks, and they ordered all project personnel eliminated. So Gentech employee Dr. Alex Mercer took a sample of the virus as insurance, and when he was eventually pinned down by Blackwatch in Penn Station, he decided to take down as many as he could with him, shattering the tube and releasing the virus known as Blacklight before getting shot. So after getting shot, the virus entered Mercer's body, consuming him and copying his entire body. So with the help of that anonymous contact, Mercer pumps blood tox underground. So blood tox is a red chemical that can be sprayed into the air in vapor form to detect and injure those infected with the virus. So it's basically, used to purge the infected, along with Elizabeth Green from their subterranean, base. So Mercer pumps blood tox underground in order to drive the hiding virus above ground where it can be fought directly, causing Elizabeth Green, to emerge as a towering monstrosity whom Alex defeats and consumes. And after consuming Elizabeth Green, Alex realizes that General Randall, head of Blackwatch, is prepared to destroy Manhattan with a nuclear device. So the anonymous contact reveals himself to be Captain Cross, and he and Alex basically infiltrate the USS Ronald Reagan, where the nuclear device is held. So once Mercer consumes Randall, head of Blackwatch, Cross reveals himself to be the Supreme Hunter, and Mercer defeats him and moves the nuclear weapon out into the Atlantic Ocean, where it detonates safely. So that's basically the entire story. There's this one part in the game where this Captain Cross injects Mercer with this antivirus, and basically Mercer can't use any of his powers. He can only, he can't glide. He can only climb and walk on buildings, but he can't really use any of his abilities, until that doctor heals him. So yeah. Wait a second. I thought this was supposed to be, like, some outline. This isn't an outline. I literally just told you the entire story. Okay, I didn't. There are a lot more things, like, a lot more people, like that doctor, the other doctor. I don't know. There are a lot of things, I didn't say everything, but this is far more than just an outline. This is definitely not a SparkNotes version of the story, so yeah, I apologize for that one. Now, I guess it's imperative to preface all of this by saying that I've always had a predilection, I've always gravitated towards high-octane action games, and this game completely had me by the balls. Like, I was on Cloud 9 every single time I played this game, and I was absolutely enamored with it. Like, suffice it to say, the game is absolutely intoxicating and rocks on all fronts. Like, it simply has far too many laudable feats for me to even compile them. Like, Mercer is equipped with a plethora of weapons. Like, he has claws, hammer fists, muscle mass, a blade, a whip fist, a shield, armor, thermal and infected vision, the ability to shapeshift, and everything but the kitchen sink, honestly. And these are just the nitty-gritty of his abilities. So anyway, Mercer has so many attacks and moves and abilities that it's absolutely insane. So starting off with his base weapons, if you will, he's got the blade. Now the blade has about, like, I don't know, maybe 3 moves. Like, you got the 5-hit combo, and as is the case with most of Mercer's attacks and moves and combos, if you will, you can choose to just mash the left mouse button and you can just hit your opponent with this combo, but you can also choose to, press and hold the left mouse button after each hit, and this will basically charge the move in a way. It'll be slower, but it'll deal more damage. So he's got this 5-hit combo. He's also got this frenzy move, or sprint frenzy, where he just, dashes at you with his blade, to cut you up. And he's got this air slice, and this move is highly effective against tanks. It instantaneously destroys them depending on, what difficulty you're playing. And next we've got the claws. The claws have a 3-hit combo, and you can also, charge every hit. And he's got, with the claws, he can use this dashing slice, where he just dashes at you with his claw. And he also has this ground spike move, which is really good. Like, he just sticks his claw into the ground, and, these ground spikes emerge from the ground and pierce the opponent, like impale the opponents, or, well, tanks, or whatever. So, he's also got, like, he's got the whip fist. So, the whip fist is highly effective for, grabbing targets and stuff, or fighting from some kind of distance. Like, you can hijack a helicopter or grab anything and consume anything. You have this street sweeper move where Mercer just, like, cleans the area around him with his whip fist. It's really satisfying. He's got this long shot grab and all sorts of things. So he's also got, the hammer fists. So hammer fists are, how do I even put this? Like, they're basically these hard-hitting weapons, like, if you, like, boulder arms in a way. I don't really know how to describe it, but he has a four-hit combo with the hammer fists, and he's also got this hammer fist smackdown move where he charges his hammer fist, and it gets bigger, and then it, like, shatters the ground or something. I don't really know. He's also got the hammer fist elbow slam where he does this wrestling move, and he's also got this insanely satisfying move called hammer toss where he just, like, flies like Superman. Like, it's so cool. Like, he uses the weight of his hammer fist, and, it's pretty cool. He's also got, he's got the muscle mass. Now, the thing with his muscle mass is this weapon, it doesn't have any combos or moves in a way. Like, it's the same as your regular fists and kicks, basically. But this weapon deals so much damage that it's absolutely insane. Like, you can throw things a lot farther than with your regular hands and fists, whatever. You can instantaneously destroy helicopters with, the flying kick move or that cannonball move. It's really, really effective. It inflicts incredible damage. So yeah, there's the muscle mass power. We've also got the sensory abilities. Basically, you've got the thermal vision, which will allow Mercer to, like, see through smoke, basically, in a way, and explosions. And you've also got this infected vision that will show Mercer who is infected, like zombies and all that. You've also got these defensive abilities. You've got the shield, which is, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a shield, but you can use it to, like, dash at people, and it does this. It's really satisfying. Like, you can just push everybody away with the shield. It's ridiculous, honestly. And you got the armor. Now, the armor, really, when using the armor, you relinquish your agility. It deprives you of a lot of speed and all that. You can't jump as high, you can't run as fast, you can't glide at all, but it looks fucking amazing, and it's a really good defense, honestly. So that's simply, just his base weapons, Now, for his movement, he can air dash twice in the air and, gain altitude. He can glide, which is really pivotal to this game, like gliding, like it's like flying, but not really. You're not simply levitating, you've got air recovery, which is basically just like Flipper from DMC5. You've also got you've got dive roll, but that's really nothing to write home about. It's just, flipping on the ground. Every game has that. You can jump really high, and you have this wall jump latch where you can basically, cause this. I don't really know how to describe it. Like this friction when you're dropping down a building, and you can just perform this jump thingy, and it's insanely satisfying, honestly, but I really don't know how to describe it appropriately. Now, as for Mercer's combat, he's got, like, a multitude of things. Like, in the air, he can perform this flying kick, and he can also do this flip kick launcher, which is basically, after performing the flying kick, Mercer, kicks the opponent even further, like launching them somewhere. And you've got this body surf, which is incredibly satisfying. It reminds me of DMC3, with that I think you had a move like that in DMC3 where you basically surf on the body, you like use it as a skateboard or something. You have this flying elbow drop, which is basically the same as that hammer fist move, but you're using it with your base form. You're not using the hammer fist for it. You've got the air stomp, which is good for like shaking up the area around you. You've also got Cannonball, which is incredibly useful for destroying helicopters and all that stuff, and like one hit KO. You've got the air combo, which is obvious. It's like a 3-hit combo, but you also have Spike Driver, which is basically a 4th hit for your air combo. You've got the bullet dive drop. Like the bullet dive drop is one of my like favorite moves. Like Mercer just does this incredible drop, and it's just the most satisfying move in the game, in my opinion. It's absolutely insane. Now, there's some things that Mercer can also do, like, how do I put this? Like, he has this, ground shatter move, like, he can charge it, but you don't have to. So, the ground shatter move, it's, pretty self-explanatory. Mercer just shatters the ground around him in a way, he shakes it up. But if you charge this move completely, and you have your critical mass, you can actually perform a Devastator. And you've got, Mercer's got 3 Devastators. You've got the Ground Spike Graveyard Devastator, you've got the Tendril Barrage Devastator, and you've got the Critical Pain Devastator. And all of these Devastators are actually, how do I put this, like enhanced versions of his Ground Shatter, Palm Slam, and Knuckle Shockwave moves. So, basically, the Ground Shatter move, the Devastator for this Ground Shatter move is going to be the Ground Spike Graveyard Devastator. And he's also got this Knuckle Shockwave move, and if you charge this completely, you get the Tendril Barrage Devastator. And you've also got Palm Slam, which is like this shockwave in a way. Like Mercer just does this shockwave. I don't really know how else to explain this. And if you charge this move, you get the Critical Pain Devastator, which is like this Kamehameha beam-like tendril in a way. And of course you can do all of these in midair as well, like all of these Devastators. And you can also do, the Knuckle Shockwave in the air. It's like the air Knuckle Shockwave. But if you try to do the Palm Slam in midair, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to do Cannonball instead. And you can't use Ground Shatter in midair, because there's no ground, obviously. So you basically use this, this like Ground Shatter drop, in a way. I don't really know what it's called. I think that's what it's called, the Ground Shatter drop, but I'm not quite sure. So, what else is there, honestly? You've got this Breakdown Smash, which is like, how do I even put that? Like, yeah, well, basically, Mercer has a lot of combos. Well, not really, but, he has his base combo with his fists, which is like, you press the left mouse button 3 times, and that's it. And like, you're like 1, 2, 3, he punches the opponent 3 times. But if you hold, like, you press the left mouse button twice, and you hold it, a 3rd time, Mercer will, do this breakdown smash thingy. So there's that, and Mercer's also, you can mix all of these attacks. So basically, left mouse button is for your fist attacks, or basically punches, but your right mouse button is for kicks or leg attacks. So Mercer has this, I think it's, so he's got this 3-hit fist combo. He can also do breakdown smash, which I guess counts as a separate combo. And he also has this other combo with his fists where he, you press the right mouse button and he kicks his opponent, but then you press the left mouse button 3 times and Mercer will do an entirely different combo with his fists. And he also has a 4-hit or a 5-hit, I'm not sure. I think it's a 4-hit kick combo if you press the right mouse button 4 times. But you can also mix this up. You have a second kick combo, which you start off by punching your opponent, like you press the left mouse button, but then you press the right mouse button twice, and Mercer will do this, different combo. So you can just mix up any of these punches and kicks. It's pretty cool, honestly. So yeah, there's that. Prototype 2 does not have this. Keep that in mind. So you got this uppercut launcher. It's like Real Impact or the Divine Dragon from Devil May Cry. It's basically, I don't know, an uppercut. I mean, that's basically what it is. It launches the opponent into the air. It's kind of weird. It's kind of difficult to perform, but what can you do? And you've got the snap kick launcher, which is just this hit, this kick in a way. You lock onto your opponent and you kick him. So you've also got this curb stomp move where you basically kick your opponent while he's on the ground. Like you kick them multiple times. So there's also there's that. You've also got this charged throw. You can basically throw anything. Like your opponent, you can throw objects. You can throw basically anything. You can also do a sprinting throw, like while running, you grab someone and then you throw them. There's that. You've also got the sprinting grab. You've got the sprinting grab and the sprinting throw. Like you can just grab someone while running and then throw them immediately. You've also got this hunter dirt nap, which is basically if you grab a hunter and press the left mouse button, you'll basically, suplex this fucking hunter. So, and finally you've got the grapple slam, which is just this really satisfying move, and you've got the power bomb, which, well, need I say more? Like, you can see what it is on the screen. It's also pretty satisfying. Also, needless to say, like, Mercer can consume pedestrians and, zombies and all that. So, basically, he can do this with his with no weapon equipped. Well, with his bare fists and with his legs and arms, basically. And he has four different animations for when he consumes things with his arms and legs. But he has about 2 to 3 different unique animations for each weapon. For the whip fist, for the blade. He has 2 to 3 different animations, different consume animations for each weapon. So, yeah. And he's also got this stealth consume option, like when no one's watching, when no Marine or any Black Watch soldier is watching, Mercer can basically sneak up on someone. He can be behind them and, well, consume them, and take their shape, unnoticeably in a way, without anybody, batting an eye. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. You've also got this Patsy move, which is really cool, honestly. I don't think that was a thing in Prototype 2 either. Like, you can basically tackle some Marine or some Blackwatch soldier and accuse them of being hostile, accuse them of being Mercer or something. So the other Marines will shoot this soldier. Like, it's pretty fucking cool. And you got this range boost for this Patsy move where you can just point your finger at some Marine and go like, yeah, this is Mercer, this is the bad guy, and everybody shoots him, basically. You've also got this ability to call an artillery strike on some hive or something. If you're, disguised as a Blackwatch soldier, it's honestly pretty fucking cool. Like, it's really cool. Also, it doesn't say this anywhere, but you can basically do this. Obviously you can walk on buildings, but you can also press E by default, at least, and Mercer will stick to the surface he's climbing, and he'll climb it like Spider-Man. It doesn't say anywhere how to do this move or what it's called, but it's definitely a thing. Also, you can do a flip in midair, which is pretty cool. So, yeah. Another thing that really makes this game so, I don't know, maybe memorable is the amount of detail you have. Like, basically the upgrade menu. You got this upgrade menu, and this simply isn't a thing in Prototype 2. And you've got this, net, if you will, where you can basically you can basically see all the memories of all the people you consumed, or well, all the story relevant people you've consumed. Obviously, you're not gonna see the memories of some random pedestrians because they simply don't matter. They're just food. So I think that's kind of cool. You've also got this, you got the survivability section where you have these upgrades like Mercer can regenerate automatically, like he can gradually regenerate and replenish his lost health and vitality. And he also has this critical mass, which is this blue bar next to his health bar, which basically, when it's full, you can use like 3 Devastators before, it's empty again. And basically, you've also got this adrenaline surge move, like when you're beaten into a corner, like when you are at 0 HP, when the entire screen is like gray and all that. You have this adrenaline surge move, which gives you some critical mass, and you can use any Devastator of your liking as the last ditch effort, or you could just escape. So that's pretty cool. Now, unlike DMC, Prototype isn't exactly that, like, combat-oriented. Like, the combat isn't exactly the game's forte. Like, not saying that it's bad by any means, but it's simply not as complex and as fleshed out as, DMC 5, for example. So, it's kind of pedestrian in comparison to DMC, honestly, but, DMC has insane combat complexity, like, to the point where some people would call it insanely intricate and, convoluted, even though, by itself, it's pretty simple, but, on the flip side, Prototype is, it's more movement oriented. Like in DMC 5, you got a lot of moves, but most of them boil down to combat and style. The moves are abundant, albeit pretty simple to learn if you dedicate yourself. So, sure, you got attacks that are like, that affect the environment in a different way, hitting multiple targets at once, but in Prototype, almost every attack at your disposal is, meant to shake up the environment, basically, the area around you, like, to carpet the area with spikes or have all these tentacles dissipate from your body and hit everything around you, which I guess, Judgment in DMC 5 is like the closest equivalent I can think of for this move, but yeah. Also, Prototype has no air combos, aerial combat is a thing, like you can use Cannonball and all of your Devastators in the air, and you can glide and air dash and kick helicopters and use your whip fist, but you don't have any air combos except for Spike Driver. That's one air combo, and it's pretty difficult to land. And whereas in DMC 5, air combos are like they're like a substantial part of the game. Also, unlike DMC 5, like where every opponent has a moveset of their own, in Prototype, your enemies are food for the most part. Like the zombies can hit you once or twice, but the damage they inflict is minuscule, and like it's laughable easy to evade, and it's just stupid, and the pedestrians will just run away. So they're only there for you to consume them and get more health and energy. The Marines and Black Watch soldiers are no different, honestly, except they have assault rifles, machine guns, grenade launchers, and rocket launchers, and they can be kind of annoying when they have you outnumbered. So the Hunters only have one line of attacks, like where they just punch you a couple of times, or like regardless of what you do. But even they are relatively easy to take down and, overcome. Now, this isn't to say that the game is easy by any means. As a matter of fact, Elizabeth Green is probably one of the hardest bosses I've ever had the misfortune of facing, but, I digress. So, one of the many things that gives Prototype the edge over its sequel and makes it a cut above the rest in general is its ingeniously integrated parkour movement. Like, Mercer will flip around in the air on his own, like, his body will have a different reaction to various platforms, and it'll have these maneuvers, and it'll trigger a different parkour animation and give off this sense of flexibility and smoothness. Like, the game has so much liberty when it comes to movement that it's absolutely insane. And even though the combat isn't, complex in the slightest, it's just so gratifying to slice and dice your targets. It's so cool. Like, there's actual gore and dismemberment, like limbs flying around everywhere. There's so much impact. The particles are very nice. Like when you jump, it feels completely amazing. When you run, it feels really fast. And when you glide, it's also amazing. Like, to put it bluntly, whatever you do in this game has such tremendous impact and smoothness and flexibility that it's actually astounding to me, like 10 years later. Oh yeah, and the bullet dive drop literally gives me an adrenaline rush every single time I perform it, especially from a very considerable height. So, just like DMC, this game makes you feel like a god and a badass. Like, Mercer's design, while some might argue it looks a bit ridiculous, I mean, the guy's wearing a leather jacket over a hooded sweatshirt, over a long-sleeved shirt. There's just something inherently badass about it. The game was simply ahead of its time. It was ahead of the curve, if you will. Because, not a lot of modern action games can boast this much badassery nowadays. And, now I've seen people argue that the map is bland and that the game is graphically horrible. And I simply can't fathom any of that. Like, the map, while definitely having some repetitive textures and buildings and all that, it still has a lot of landmarks and different buildings, and Manhattan feels incredibly detailed all around, in my opinion. After completion, your main enemies, I guess, are like helicopters and tanks and maybe hunters, but you can handle them all with relative ease, and you can also destroy bases and hives, but they'll just reappear once you do. You have challenges like parkour and stuff like that. You can collect landmarks, you can and hints, and you can actually drive tanks and fly helicopters. You can use assault rifles, machine guns, grenade launchers, rocket launchers, and all that. And, needless to say, you can walk on walls while flipping around and doing all this crazy shit. So, you might be wondering, like, what's the catch? And, frankly, there is no catch. Like, I'm not saying that the game is completely irreproachable. I'm not saying that it's the best thing since sliced bread, because every game is bound to have something that's flawed. Like, in hindsight, the story might not be as good as I remember it. Like, some missions got pretty repetitive, like, just consume this soldier, fly this chopper, destroy this base, but it was still a memorable experience nonetheless. I remember especially liking, the sense of progression that the game gives off. Like, you can actually see the world succumbing to the virus, and you can see more and more areas becoming infected, which was a really nice touch in my opinion. Now let's talk about the sequel, Prototype 2. Okay, so first off, the ending makes no sense to me. Like, how Heller managed to defeat Mercer is beyond me. Like, Mercer had the Mercer virus he injected Heller with. Like, Heller was nothing but an evolved. Like, Mercer had consumed Elizabeth Green and a bunch of other people. And, the thing is, when Mercer consumes someone, he gains all their powers, memories, talents, shapes, and all that. And it's vividly clear that Heller is way less experienced than Mercer, yet he manages to absolutely wreck the guy. Now, you could venture to say that Heller's DNA is unique, but that doesn't explain why Mercer didn't use any of his moves, any of his devastators. He didn't use his armor or his muscle mass or anything. He was throwing helicopters at the guy, and this is the same guy who survived a literal nuke at almost point-blank range in Prototype 1. And, he throws in the towel and kicks the bucket like this. Like, honestly, I don't even know. It's absolutely abysmal writing. Oh, and not to mention that Mercer consumed all of the Evolved prior to his fight with Heller. So, it's like he just lost access to all of his abilities and lost to a fake, underpowered version of himself for no reason. Like, Prototype 2 was lacking, and, it couldn't really hold a candle to Prototype 1 in any way. It kind of pales in comparison. It's kind of lackluster. I'm not saying it's bad. Like, they tried some innovations with that brawler formation move, or, detaching the minigun from helicopters and tanks, having unique consume animations for brawlers, and I was also fond of how your weapons actually change their shape with each upgrade, with each level, like they stop looking like random biomass protrusions and start looking like actual weapons. And I also kind of liked how, when you hit your enemies with your tendrils, the tendrils stay and kind of change the environment. But all of this is really nothing to write home about. Like the graphics were gorgeous for a 2012 game. However, it was really good. But every consume animation was recycled from Prototype 1. The movement was a lot stiffer, and it wasn't as fluid as Prototype 1. There were no parkour animations. I mean, there were, but they were kind of janky and not smooth. And Heller didn't even have a move list. Like, each of his weapons has about, I don't know, like 3 moves, and that's about it. Not to mention, no Devastators, save for that one Biomass Expulsion move. And not to mention that they completely excluded the upgrade menu and all that, and how Heller hasn't even got a quarter of the moves that Mercer had, like both movement and combat wise. Like, I like the Bio Bomb kick move and the fact that you could actually combine 2 weapons and use them at the same time, but it was still weird and kind of impractical, And not to mention that the map was really bad. Manhattan especially was just gray and ruined, and it had no spirit. I even made a comparison here, you can see that. And the rest of the map was, just clustered and weird. But yeah, and not to mention that Heller was a less charismatic and badass character, and you could see that they tried really hard to make him badass, but it just wasn't cutting it. And not to mention the continuous swearing and how he goes every time he fucking glides. It's like he's fucking trying to take a shit. Like, are you constipated, Heller? What the fuck? So anyway, Mercer was, calm and, he was calm and collected. And he wasn't that fired up over everything. And the thing is, the fact that Mercer was like this evil dude in Prototype 2, like that the fact that he was evil in the first place was bullshit. Like, apparently there was some Prototype comic or something where Alex finds a girlfriend, and her family turns out to be a family of thieves and thugs, and he catches his girlfriend stealing his money for drugs, and apparently that makes him decide to hate humanity as a whole. It's completely asinine and nonsensical. I wish they'd gone with a different storyline for Prototype 2, because it goes without saying that the game didn't end on a high note, but, there's no use crying over spilled milk, honestly, so... that's how the ball bounces. Moreover, it's kinda hard for me to ignore Prototype, as some of my most viewed videos come from, well, Prototype videos, with one video in particular hitting well over 1 million views, and I'm particularly proud of that. Now, I've noticed a lot of people commenting on this video, saying stuff like, OMG, it's Venom, oh my god, it's Spider-Man, oh my god, it's kinda like Hulk and Venom, like, had a baby. And I think this really drives home just how obscure and foreign Prototype actually is as a franchise, since people see this game and think of it as analogous to Venom and Spider-Man. Now, I personally don't have a problem with this, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of people say how Prototype is nothing but a cheap ripoff of Spider-Man, or I don't know, a poor man's Spider-Man, since Activision apparently used the same engine for one of their Spider-Man games prior to the release of Prototype. And, you can't really deny that Prototype was probably inspired by Venom, Hulk, and Spider-Man, and maybe even Assassin's Creed to an extent, because, the bullet dive drop is low-key similar to the Leap of Faith, and, Mercer has a hoodie, but irrespective of all this, Prototype is still an incredibly unique game. Oh, and it's not just the Venom comments. Every single day, as soon as I open my fucking eyes and check my phone, my screen is interminably and incessantly flooded with 5,000 fucking notifications of people asking me, what game, bro? What game? And I fucking had it. It's literally in the fucking title, you fucking troglodytes. No, it's not fucking Infamous or a skin for fucking Ezio from Assassin's Creed. It's fucking Prototype, an amazing game in and of itself, deserving of as much recognition as the next game, or as any— Okay, I'm getting kind of carried away. I know. This was deliberate. Oh, and the fact that my Prototype video, with 1.2 million views, is one of the top 20 most viewed Prototype videos on YouTube, really cements what I've been saying, additionally. Also, there were several compilations or, well, short videos of, like top 10 or top 15 or even top 20 most exciting action games or best action games or best open world action games or anything of that sort. And believe it or not, not one of these videos put Prototype or even Prototype 2 on the list. And this was also the last straw, like the straw that broke the camel's back. Well, there were a lot of things that compelled me to make this video, but that was definitely one of them. And it really goes in line with what I keep saying in this video. And what really strikes me as odd, like I said before, is not just how niche this game is apparently, but why games of this genre aren't being made nowadays. I mean, what's not to love? Like, you play as a badass freak of nature with all these insane powers, you have an open world, you have so many things, and yet no one has made a game like this. Now, obviously, you've got Spider-Man, Infamous, and games of that sort, and I haven't really played Infamous, even though I'd love to, but the city, Seattle, seems kinda dull, and the powers don't seem nearly as exciting as Prototype, and I'm not even gonna mention the movement. And as for Spider-Man, it's very entrenched, it's a really very well established franchise that goes way back, and graphically the game's insane, right? But for example, the combat in Spider-Man, it secludes you from the environment. Like, you can't really utilize the environment to your liking, and you can't really employ any crazy strategies, because you usually fight on some rooftops, and mid-combat the entire map is kind of locked to you. Like, you can't use your environment to your advantage, and you're very limited and restricted, And I've also noticed that like 90% of the games that come out nowadays and try to be dynamic usually fail. And I feel like there's a pattern here. Like, I feel as though these games are being held back mechanically by the graphics. Now, it's like, like, the graphics and mechanics can coexist for some reason. Like, it always ends with the mechanics being very stiff and wonky. Like, the only exception to this that I can think of is DMC5, which completely fucks the system, because, the visuals are stellar and the mechanics are simply ineffable, And I also played Metal Gear Rising, expecting incredible combat and action, DMC style, but I had a litany of complaints for this game, and even though I ended up, thoroughly enjoying it, ultimately, the camera was kind of, jarring, the graphics were also not that good for a game that came out in 2013, and I really didn't, I wasn't a fan of how heavily reliant it was on the parry system, and, it had zero impact. Now, everyone praises this game for its badassery and how you can slice anything, but slicing doesn't feel satisfying in this game at all. Like, there's no sound or flashy particles that make you feel like you cut something. Like, the soundtrack is incredible. I'm not gonna argue. Like, there's not a single bad song in that game, and Raiden's a real badass. But, you've only got one weapon, and, the sword, and if you want to pick the staff or the pincer blades, you're gonna have to relinquish some of your sword moves, which is very regrettable. And it kind of reminds me of Prototype 2. It reminds me of how Prototype 2 tried to make this system where you can simultaneously use two of your weapons, but this system ended up being completely lame. And what I think Prototype should have done from the get-go was create an immediate weapon switch system like DMC. Like a system where you can interrupt your combo immediately when you switch to a new weapon. It will make the combat a lot more immersive and give everything this form of complexity. Like, because in Prototype you gotta fucking press R or whatever button it is, like, to enter the menu, the weapon menu, and then select your weapon while time is slowed down, which is highly impractical for a high-octane action game. So imagine a game with DMC's combat and Prototype's movement and powers, like the best of both worlds. It'd be insane. Now, keep in mind that I'm not trying to chastise or belittle these games in any way. I don't think they're bogus or anything. I'm just marveling at Prototype as both a game and an incredibly promising concept. So, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Like, I felt kind of obligated to make this clarification because I did say how I thought that, I mean, I still think that Prototype is somewhat lackluster and how it pales in comparison to Prototype 1, which I still stand by that statement to some degree. But, that isn't to say that, Prototype 2 is a bad game. Now, admittedly, a lot of the things I've said and shown in this video are kind of indicative of how Prototype 2 is not as good as Prototype 1. But, as a matter of fact, I actually prefer the Hammer Fists in Prototype 2. They felt a lot more useful. They packed a punch. They weren't as sluggish as they were in, Prototype 1. The tendrils were a very, nice touch. I really like those abilities as well. I mean, that weapon. And I liked how, most of Heller's weapons had like 5 to 6 hits, like a 5 to 6 hit combo. And I guess that kind of compensates for some other flaws that the game has. So, yeah. So, the reason why I think this game may not be as known as it deserves to be might have a lot to do with the state of modern gaming and the consumers, or rather the people who take everything at face value and get hyped for the same shit over and over and over again, and they just perpetuate and contribute to the status quo being shit. So these cookie cutter RPGs and MMOs are being glamorized, and they're just skyrocketing, and no one's even making action games, if you think about it, or at least no one's making good action games, and when they do, it's usually once in a blue moon, like with DMC5. So it's usually the same recycled stuff. Action games are simply at an all-time low. They're just pretty few and far between nowadays. They're probably a no-go for most developers because, the undertaking itself can be kind of taxing on their budget or something, and they have no valid reason, they've got no valid reason to invest into a quality-ass game when their audience will just purchase whatever they throw at them. Like, no one's actually innovating, save for a few indie developers who just don't have the resources to make a good standalone game. And the closest thing to Prototype is that Saints Row 4 game, and that game's not even in the same ballpark, not by a long shot. It's a far cry from Prototype, and it's simply not my cup of tea, And a good chunk of me has always been under the impression that most concepts in modern gaming are just incredibly trite, and the games end up being very vapid as a result, but that doesn't stop gamers from jumping on the bandwagon and buying these games regardless, simply because of the title, and, because of the characters or something, and it certainly won't stop the developers from creating such games without an iota of inspiration, so, I rest my case. It's beyond apparent what's going on. Now, you can ascribe, you can attribute the fall of Prototype to a myriad of things, like people's tastes simply being shit, or you could chalk it up to, like, the developer's laziness to embark on something as big as Prototype, because nowadays, gaming is an industry. It's highly commercialized, it's highly corporate, and it's all about advertisement and money. I said this in my previous commentary video about the state of anime games, which, in all honesty, is far, far worse than what I'm harping on about here and now. But, it's nothing to get riled up over right now, so... So, in closing thoughts, like, to wrap this up, to summarize, I think it's abundantly clear, or at least it's been made crystal clear, that Prototype is not a famous game, unfortunately. Now, I had half a mind to make a video gushing over how incredible Prototype is, but this ended up being something, not even remotely close to that, honestly. It just ended up being something completely different altogether. And even though there was a lot of jizzing on my end in this video, I still try to approach this from a somewhat different angle, And the video didn't really come out of left field, because Prototype has always been one of my all-time favorites. It's been like this formative game for me growing up. And I've seen White Light's videos on Prototype 3, as well as Purposeless Rabbit Holes, and it actually, filled me with joy, like, knowing that there are people in this world who still care about this franchise. And moreover, the videos garnered a lot of attention, apparently. I mean, 800k views is still not a meager amount, But the thing I really like about these guys' videos is how they're putting in so much effort on an abstract concept, like on a game that doesn't exist and might not ever exist. Just like that Dante Smash moveset video from Source Gaming, where he basically designs a moveset for Dante in Smash. Like, I really have a thing for these types of videos, and, I have a penchant for making these kinds of videos myself, like the hypothetical Storm moveset videos, where I spend, like, a lot of time pondering how these characters' moves could be integrated into Storm 4, hypothetical things. Like, it brings me joy, but it simultaneously pains me, as I know that all of this falls on deaf ears and simply, it just flies under the radar, just like Prototype itself, since the developers just don't care. Now, I'd be hard-pressed to call myself a die-hard Prototype fan, even though I've been playing this game for, like, 8 years now, and I still play the ever-loving fuck out of it whenever I'm bored. Like, it's just that good. And now you might be asking, will Prototype 3 ever be a thing? Like, beats me. Truth be told, like, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I don't think so. Like, I'm dead-ass salty about it, but I don't really know what to do. I'm not saying it's entirely implausible, but, it's not looking good, Here's hoping that, someday we will see a Prototype 3. I mean, DMC made a comeback after like 11 years, and as horrible as 2020 has been thus far, like as a year, it's been pretty shit. Bleach is making a comeback after, like, I don't know, 9 years. Shaman King, like one of my favorite anime, is making a comeback. Mafia 1 is getting a remake. Now, admittedly, DMC 5 came out in 2019, and most of these things will come out in 2021, but they got announced in 2020. So yeah, I recommend watching White Light and Purposeless Rabbit Holes videos on Prototype 3. They're exceptionally good, unlike my videos, so there's that. And I feel like what Prototype has to bring to the table could very well revolutionize and elevate the action genre as we know it. Like, transcend the action in most action games, or, well, lack thereof, because there's nothing to keep the genre afloat. And Prototype has so many features, and, like, the more the merrier, right? As long as the game has a lot of powers and a lot of these cool-ass features, it's good in my book. Whew, so that's my take on Prototype and the state it's in. Like, taking all these things into account, it's a lot less miraculous how Prototype is where it is right now. Now, for what it's worth, like, at the very least, we have Prototype. Like, they can't take that away. So even if they don't end up making a Prototype 3, we can always find solace in the fact that we have the game to begin with. And last but not least, I like to say that I realize that originality is a difficult concept to conceive, let alone maintain, but that doesn't justify the current state of gaming. Like, developers should strive to make quality games, and if their customers are dissatisfied with a certain game and how it turned out, they should try harder with the next iteration and go, like, try this on for size. But I highly doubt that's gonna happen anytime soon, because, for the umpteenth time, it's the customers or the gamers that buy things mindlessly. So, the chances of the status quo changing and becoming less reprehensible are infinitesimal, honestly. So on the off chance that things actually do change for the better, then color me pleasantly surprised, but as it is, it doesn't bode well. So for the love of all that is holy, please start making games that are worthwhile. And yeah, I apologize for the recurring arguments interspersed all throughout the video. As you already know, I'm really prone to doing that, so, sorry. And yeah, so a penny for your thoughts. You know the drill. If you have anything to say on the topic at hand, I implore you to say whatever you have in the comments below. And as per usual, if you like the video, like it. If you didn't, dislike it. Feel free to like, subscribe. And as always, people, see ya, peace out, and have an amazing day.